Hey, so I'm actually outside and actually have phone battery, so I figured I would take this time to actually kind of give the Reader's Digest version, aka the like super shortened version of like my life, I guess. Like I'm gonna like try and squish it into like just like a really short amount of time and like just try and cover all the ground. It should be real interesting. I've never really done one of these kind of things before, so yeah. Alright, so I was born in 94, so I'm 23 at this point when I'm making this right now, so yeah, 90s baby, but I was born into a family that we were in like this ministry, right? And we were just getting out of, the family was just getting out of this ministry. It was called The Way International. And there was a lot of issues with that group. And so my parents got out, took us off. We end up, being homeschooled, me and my brother, right? Homeschooled all the way. I was homeschooled, so was he, all the way through. I've never been to school a day in my life. Never been to school, but I have an accredited high school diploma because I did the whole thing with textbooks and tests and stuff, sending them back to the school and everything. So I did that, and I graduated high school then. By the time I graduated at 15, and by that point I was already having body image issues. I was already having eating disorder problems since I was 11, and when I was 14, 15, I started cutting myself too. So that started, and then I was like 15, and then when I turned 16, and I told my parents that I was gay. I figured it was easier to tell them that than I was bi, because I thought that if I told them I was bi, then they would just think I was a whore or something. I don't know. I was really, really worked up about the whole thing. It all turned into kind of a mess, just because I'm a mess of a person, don't make it easy. So, all that ends up happening. A few months later, I'm 16, right? I end up running away from home overnight and come back because I realized I don't have enough bus money. I'd already cut my hair off and everything. And then a few weeks later, after my grandma left after a visit, I took off and got on a Greyhound from Orlando, Florida to Miami and was down there for a week. And this week I ended up, within the first 24 hours, some guy was like literally, I was just going into my room, and he just, pushed his way in, and that was, I hadn't even kissed anyone before. I think I kind of maybe held hands with my boyfriend at the time. I'd held hands, I think, but, other than that, I had not done anything else. And so all this happens. I remember that I lost my shit because I thought that I can't go home now. I'm not pure anymore. I can't go home. I did this. I made the decision to come down here, so all of this is my fault, and it's all my fault anyway. So I remember just collapsing on the floor and just bawling. And then finally I'm like, what am I going to do? Just lay here and die? I'm like, no. So I kind of shake it off, get up off the damn floor, stupid wet carpet, get up off the carpet and go wash my face and go on with my life. And then the rest of that week didn't really actually go any better. Got actually a lot worse, way worse. I ended up being part of some sort of a sex ring out of the motel that I was in, and then I got drugged a couple nights after I got there. And then I ended up being taken away by this pimp and prostitute Q and Unique that they took me off. But then I ended up losing my shit because she tells me that someone that I was with had AIDS, so I thought I had AIDS. So I went to a Catholic church, and I'm losing my shit. The docent comes in, because it's a historical place, right? The docent comes in, he's like, do you need to speak to a priest? I'm like, I'm not Catholic, but yeah. So he takes me over, I talk to this priest after getting some appropriate clothing, and I kind of tell him what's going on. He takes me to the clinic, where after helping me pick up my suitcase, right, he waits downstairs, I go get my shit, I'm like, I'm gone. I'm not who I said I was. I'm not how old I said I was. I'm only 16, and I ran away, so I'm gone. So he takes me to the clinic after that, right? The priest does. And then from there, I'm sitting next to this lady, named Janet, and she ended up letting me use her cell phone. And my parents happened to be like 30, 40 minutes away. They were handing out flyers on the beach. So they come and pick me up. Everything turns out, everything's totally manageable, dealable. It's all fine. But I end up coming back. Then I end up in the mental hospital the next day, right? Because they found stuff in my... They were really worried, which they should have been. But then they end up starting to put me on medication. I end up going back into the hospital probably like 30-something times over the next few years. I cut my whole body up and down like 3 or 4 times. I just lost my shit. I threw things. I was losing my nut. Throwing bricks at cars, light bulbs at cops' heads. They had to restrain me with the big ones, and I could still get out of those. They called me Houdini. It was a thing that happened, unfortunately. But then I'm like 18, 19, right? And I end up in this one nut hut. And one of the mental health professionals there named Pedro is at this place called Lamastad, right? And Pedro, he kept just like befriending me and walking me around and taking time by himself with me and giving me like these long hugs and stuff and just like grooming me, right? And then by the end of like the last week, like the last time I ended up seeing him basically before I left, he ended up molested me in the gym, which was wonderful because the police department just laughed me out of their office. They said, "Oh no, you're just a jealous girlfriend. You're just a pissed off jealous girlfriend." And I'm like, "No, I was a mental health patient." I was a mental health patient and he worked there. No one took me seriously on that. And so, that kind of all went sour. I end up living with a friend for a minute, but then I end up just all of a sudden just moving to Oregon all out of the blue. So then suddenly, poof, I'm in Oregon, right? Living with my aunt and her 26 cats, which was not good. And so then I'm living with her. I end up overdosing, being in the ICU for a couple days. In a couple weeks, I was out of it for a couple days. I was in the ICU for a couple weeks. And I was like just in and out of the nut hut. I got down to, I think, 114 pounds. I was really, really skinny. I had shaved my head. I ended up having to file a police report against one of my boyfriends because he raped me twice after I had a seizure both times. And then they didn't do anything. Nobody did anything about that. And then I end up jumping in front of a car on October 28th, 2015. I jump in front of a car, spread eagle, 45 miles per hour. I break my wrist. And then I am committed to the mental hospital after I spew a bunch of crazy shit. And then that was where I met my ex-husband, who was a brain-damaged ex-Army Ranger, airborne, infantry, with bipolar disorder, PTSD. He said brain damage. I met him while I was committed, and we end up... within the next few months, by April 2016, we were getting married. We had already moved in together by St. Pat's Day, and then that summer was just completely crazy. And honestly, there was just so much shit that ended up happening between then and then down the road. We ended up getting strung out. He got me strung out. He told me one thing was another thing. And before I knew it, I was having to do all kinds of things that I didn't want to do. Otherwise, he would be so mad. I lost everything I owned in a car that he bought that was super shitty. It was just, there was nothing there going for it. And he ended up with a leg infection from a skateboard wreck, and he almost died. And I had to take care of him for a week. And that was in March. So about a year and a half ago. And so I took care of him for that. My aunt had us move into a trailer in her driveway, no running water or anything, right? No bathroom in there. We had to go into the house. But then things started getting crazy. He started getting crazier. and he ended up going to jail on a menacing charge, and then he ended up getting out, and we were locked out of our place by my aunt, and we couldn't get into the house to use the bathroom, so we took off, and we were homeless. And so then, since then, we were just homeless. And then, like, in June, he ended up, tried to push me off a cliff, apparently just to try and scare me. And then, at the end of June, on June 30th, he attacked me with a hatchet in Blue River in the mountains while we were camping, and tried to kill me after trying to keep me trapped in the meadow where we were camping. And then he just chased me down the trail with a hatchet. A couple women